Well then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to sunny Bristol, where today we're going to be taking a tour around some of the lesser known places, including some underground and secret places that you normally wouldn't be able to go to. Let's go see what's happening. Before we get into today's video, I'd just like to mention the tour that I went on. It's the St Nicholas Market and Air Raid Shelter walking tour, and I would like to take the opportunity to tell you how good this tour is. What you're about to watch are really edited highlights from the most interesting 2 hours I think it's possible to have in Bristol. If you are in Bristol, I really recommend that you get on this tour. It's very good value. I'll put all the details at the end of the film, and Duncan will be more than happy to include you on a future tour. So let's get on with the video. Thanks for watching.
We may as well begin at the beginning. The origins of Bristol can be found over in what is now Castle Park, and those origins were Saxon. So we're talking about the 8th, 9th century. The Romans weren't too interested in this plot of land. They had a small settlement in Seamills over on the Avon Gorge, but they were far more concerned with keeping their toes nice and warm in their jacuzzis over in Bath. Very little Roman remains have been found in Bristol itself. So we now find ourselves at the heart of the medieval city of Bristol, and crucially at a crossroads: Corn Street, Broad Street, High Street and Wine Street. And we can quite clearly see that crossroads in this, the oldest map of Bristol in existence. Yes, obviously not the original, but 1478, and it shows the junction behind us, behind me, and quite clearly our High Cross. Okay, so we're now at the south side of the market, and behind you, in front of me, are some steps leading down to Baldwin Street. And I mentioned right at the beginning of the tour that the 16th century city wall ran along the line of Baldwin Street. And so these steps behind you are kind of tracing that incline of what was the defensive city wall. It is said, the night of that air raid, that a river of rats was seen crossing Bristol Bridge. A river of rats fleeing the old town. This is quite well documented, especially by the brewery workers who were in the breweries on Welsh Back. And again, I have had 2 people on the tour so far who have said, yeah, my grandmother used to talk about this, oh, my auntie used to talk about this. A river of rats. And incidentally, it was in the basement bar of the granary. The granary is the beautiful, again, Venetian-inspired Victorian building on Queen Square. In their basement bar is where that famous scene in Only Fools and Horses, where Del Boy leans on the bar and falls through, that was filmed in it. And that bar's opening up very soon to be a tapas restaurant. Up until 1877, if you were looking down Corn Street behind me, the view would have been quite different. This is the view that would have presented itself. This street is Small Street, there's Small Street right there, and where the Lloyds Bank building is now situated, you would have found St Werburgh's Church. And if you're really familiar with your Bristol churches, you might recognise this very same church as being the one in today in St Werburgh's on Minor Road by the Miners Arms pub. Anyway, now for the bit you've all been waiting for. Let's go and see the show. most of this memorabilia I have personally collected. A lot of it's come from M-Shed, eBay, various sources. Some was found in the building and has been here for 80 years. I mentioned the City Valuers Department. Check this out. It's one of the absolute hidden gems that I personally found in the room you pass through on your left there. City Valuers Department, Wartime medics kit. And I've got a bit of wood holding it up here because this crease in the back's been kind of fossilised into it. Slung in the corner as they moved out basically in the 1950s. And you will have noticed we are also next to the ladies' lavatory, gents around the corner. And this is original signage. It's never come down. 80 years that's been in place, and I guess it's just the nature of the building. Wall finished, council business started, we've got to get some storage down here, we've got to do this. And no one had the time or the inclination to either take it down or preserve it or do anything. That's an air raid shelter light here. That would have been outside the shelter. You had an ID card for your local shelter, and there weren't enough shelters for the population. That's why Anderson shelters were handed out and things. But that would have been outside a public shelter, shining white if it had space and red if it did not. This is another ARP poster and one of better preservation. It's only half there, so you have to assume a bit of it, but it's quite easy. It says something like, City and County Notice, users of ARP public area shelter, provision of hot food and drink, probably. It's not possible for a recreational mobile canteen to operate within the ARP shelter. Users of the shelter must make their own arrangements, bring with them food and hot drink. Department of Food, I think, 1940. And you can see the top of All Saints Church with the flames in stone. I mentioned the church burnt down, so there are all those kind of chalices with flames in the top. But I'm sure Mick and Keith, especially as they just had their 80th birthdays, would raise a wry smile in the knowledge that where they were performing as kids, in between the two pillars, you will now find the Bristol Rock and Fossil Shop.
And it is between these two pillars in front of me here that the stage where all those bands performed was located. Right there was where the stage was. Here, looking out that way.